Welcome back, everybody. It's Friday, and we are FinTech Fridays. I am excited to have Geoff Zimfer join. Geoff is a fellow author of the Green Book. Thanks again, Geoff. We super appreciate your selfless contribution to the book. Geoff is also the founder or the chief truth teller, which I love, at Mortgage Marketing Institute, and hosts probably the industry's top three, if not the top podcast, the Mortgage Marketing Radio. Welcome, man.
So busy. It's been months and months since we last talked one-on-one like this, so I'm thrilled to be here.
Yeah, I love doing these conversations. Most of the time when I do this, it's usually with somebody new that I'm just meeting for the first time. That's obviously not the case here. And I talk about this concept of, this podcast being my way to meet cool new people at cool new companies with cool new products. None of this is new to me, but you're definitely hitting on all the cool features, company, product, and just as a person.
And we've not yet met in person.
That's great point. Great point. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
So crazy. But this speaks to the power of this camera thing, the screen that's in between us.
Yeah.
I have a feeling that when we do meet in person, we'll have probably one of those awkward, man hug moments. But
right. The half shake, half hug. Like, what do we do?
That's right. So it's been a while, and I pay close attention to what you're doing and kind of who you're engaged with and the conversations you're having. And before we hit record, we were kind of riffing on all things LinkedIn, and I study a lot of people on that platform and other places, and mostly just trying to figure out like my message, which I'm trying to put into the universe, that supports loan officers by helping them think about, being different and being a hybrid loan officer that isn't solely focused on referrals inbound from partners, but also has the ability through personal branding to, generate their own leads. And you've spent a lot of time focusing and coaching loan officers on leaning into their referral relationships. And I just have, we're not clashing at all. I think we're very complementary, because I think when you bring it all together, at the end of the day, we're all trying to help loan officers find ways to add more value to their business partners, which in turn comes back to them, tenfold typically.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's funny you bring that up, because I've thought about it multiple times, and making a conscious choice to lean into, quote unquote referral partners, the primary one being real estate agents. And I know that comes with a certain amount of baggage, trust me. Both when I was an originator and, the fact that the realtors are an easy target to throw under the bus. But I have to say, here's the reason why I come back to, the pillars of business, right? The sources of business. And of course, there should be more than one. I love this old saying, which is the worst number in marketing is one, because if that source ever gets disrupted or goes away, well, you're dead in the water, right?
Right.
And I would agree that there's that I've seen and throughout my career, that, and myself is included as well, back when I was originating, though, it was a different world. We didn't have like this social media and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
But like the dependency on one source of business is risky, and I do believe loan officers should diversify. That being said, I don't think that they should diversify at the expense of what is the core, primary, lowest cost, highest converting source of leads.
Right.
I don't believe they should just throw the baby out with the bathwater and say, well, realtors suck. Let me just go all in on consumer direct. I think that is cutting off, the hand that feeds you, so to speak.
We're on the same page. I think about it in terms of a continuum. And if today, and I know that this is not an absolute number, but if for argument's sake today, the average, traditional distributed retail loan officer, derives 80% of their business from partners, referral sources, right? So call it 80-20. I believe the right answer is whatever the 80 component is in terms of volume or units or however you want to measure that, that doesn't go down over time, but you start growing this capability, this skill set, this muscle that helps you leverage your personal brand and all the value you're bringing as a loan officer to your community directly to consumers in your community. And maybe over time, over 5 years, that 80-20 becomes 50-50, or maybe it's 30-70, who knows? But whatever the component is from your referral source stays pretty significant. This is how you grow, can grow your aggregate business. And if done right, you're now becoming an even more valuable partner to those referral sources, because if you're truly part of the top of funnel solution, especially for very early, prospective first-time home buyers who just don't know what they don't know from a financial perspective.
Yeah.
That's where to me, that's where the gold is in this hybrid model that I kind of talk about.
Yeah. Yeah. I love the hybrid term. I think that explains it pretty well. And now the other point, let's just bring to the surface, in terms of sources of business and leads, diversification, is this, we've been in this transaction recession for 2 years ish. And the business has been down overall for everybody. And I think that's also partly caused some loan officers to seek additional sources of business because of the realtor fluctuation, because the overall business, business has been down for everybody, right? And what tends to happen is they point the finger at some easy scapegoat, which is, realtors are, that stat, which is 90% of realtors only do 4 deals a year, whatever it is.
Yeah.
That's a wonderful stat, but you get to choose who you work with. So the point being is, back to, all right, let me play that lane again with the realtor thing is, usually it's what I find is loan officers simply do not have enough agents on their bus. The average IC number that they have as quote unquote referral partners with no criteria is 10.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I had a conversation the other day on the podcast with Brian Weiss. He was talking about in his day, he had 30 plus, 35. Right. And I think that's the number we need to be at today because of the transaction recession, because of all the stuff that's happening. We're seeing agents leave the business to a certain degree, et cetera, right? NAR settlement, all this disruption is happening. So first and foremost is but back to what we said is hey, it's not necessarily, leave them behind. How about you just identify better targets, better relationships? How about you get better at actually, let me say it this way. There's usually 5 reasons why most originators don't get enough engagement or referrals from real estate agents. And top of that list is you're not talking to enough agents. Yeah. And number 2, you're talking to the wrong ones. So
yeah,
that's the first fix right there.
I love the not talking to enough agents, which I'll convert that into the consumer direct side and just say, to me, it's all about conversations, right? And it's the quantity and quality of the conversations, to your point, on the referral partner side. And to a similar degree, it's the same for consumers. And so to me, one of the benefits that, one of the superpowers, if you will, that a loan officer has, especially for this early journey first-time home buyer. So for the audience, you've heard me talk about this, but, to me, it's anybody that's 6+ months out from being truly ready to buy. They're, in my mind, that's the early journey first-time home buyer. And so what do they need the most? What does that cohort, that consumer segment need the most? Typically it's education, right? They need to do some things. They probably need to accelerate their saving for down payment. Maybe they have to do a little massaging on their debt load to get their DTI down. But at the core of all of it, they need to understand. They need education. They need somebody to hold their hand. Yep. And most of these first-time home buyers are also younger in their financial life. So it's more likely than not that they don't necessarily have a private banker for sure, and maybe not even a financial planner.
Right.
And so that's where I think the loan officers is uniquely positioned in their local communities. And I'll say local from a physical and digital perspective. That LO is uniquely positioned to be the best resource for financial education, financial preparation as it relates to, one's homeownership journey.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got to become well-known, I've been using this phrase lately, 5 Mile Famous.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember the movie, I Love You Man with Paul Rudd.
Oh yeah.
right? And so if you remember that, Paul Rudd, and then there was Jason Segel, which was this person who befriended him. And Paul Rudd was down and out because he was a realtor in LA who was not getting any business, all this stuff. And right, what does Jason Segel decide to do is like, he takes out a bunch of billboards with Paul Rudd across LA and all these, you know, the bikini thong, the cowboy to the secret agent. And it's hilarious as hell. But the point being is all of a sudden he went from being nobody, not known at all, to 5 Mile famous, and his phone rang off the hook. And I think,
right.
you know, circle back to what we're talking about here with the next gen, you know, loan officer. That is the number one thing, is to become well-known, 5 Mile famous, both in your backyard with referral partners, but also in, you know, your consumer outreach strategies as well. Because if I don't know you, I can't choose you.
Yeah, I think, and I'm going to definitely, you better trademark that 5 Mile famous, because I'm going to probably drop that a few times in upcoming content.
I got it from somebody else.
Well, that's the beauty of what we do here in sharing these conversations through the podcast mechanism, and what we do on social and sharing content. None of us are putting it out there and saying, "Hey, you can't use this." We're putting it out there. Yeah. We're putting it out there for people to use, hopefully to help them get better and think differently. So I want to pivot a little bit, because I know you're kind of you're a constant tinkerer, right? You're always looking at like what's either the next best way to do what I'm doing, or what's the next thing I should be focusing on. So as a business owner, an entrepreneur, a mad scientist, probably at times, you know, what are things you're kind of thinking about that are, you know, going to carry you through 2024 and into 2025 that people should be paying attention to?
For me personally, and my brand and business.
Yeah.
Yeah. I am actually spending a fair amount of time identifying who do I want to show up as the next iteration of my personal brand and content strategy. Because I think I've been in this lane of just posting for the sake of posting, because I feel like it's what I have to do. If I don't show up, if I don't post, and then what happens is quality suffers. And then engagement suffers. And then, you know, you get down this rabbit hole of like, why am I not getting the result? Why am I not, you know what I mean? And so I think I've pulled back a little bit and said, you know what, I don't want to post just for the sake of posting. It's important to be present consistently. But I've also been looking at some data and stuff, you know, around YouTube, and what's the reality, or what's the truth about how consistently you need to post. And I've spent a fair amount of money on some consultants recently. And, what I'm finding is that quality is the answer. Now, that's a double-sided coin, because you do have to have quantity in some regard to get to quality, right?
Right.
Because that's how you're going to learn your thing and get your rhythm and develop your voice. So I'm not saying like you're going to hide back and wait until, oh my God, I've got the perfect. No. Yeah. You've got to be doing the laps and getting the reps. But let's face it, I've been doing that. Like with the podcast, for example, I've been doing it for 8 years. Okay. So right. I'm at this place of like, what do I do? How do I go to the next level? And that's what I'm thinking a lot about right now, is content strategy that isn't about gaming the system or understanding the algorithm. It's about creating something for the viewer, the listener, and putting it through that filter. And that takes some time and thinking.
Yeah, so you hit on 3 things that I want to just kind of poke a layer deeper at, because all 3 I think are very intuitive and smart. And I want to start with the first one, which is maybe working backwards. This concept of gaming the system, gaming the algorithm, gaming the platform, whatever you want to call it, right? And we know that people are doing that, and that's fine, because people may have a different end game strategy. When I think of what you're doing with your brand, with your company, and with, you know, the services that you provide, it's not too dissimilar to what I'm doing and trying to do with my personal brand, what we're trying to do as a company at FinLocker and our product and services. We know who our target buyer is, which, guess what, folks? If you're watching this, you're probably in our sweet spot. But we know who we're trying to message to, right?
Right.
And so that's the first thing is this, you know, this not getting enamored or pulled down the engagement for engagement's sake lane, right? Mm-hmm. So let's poke at that just a little bit.
Sure.
Because I think there are people out there that are trying to grow just for growth's sake without really I don't think they really understand what the end game is for their growth on a particular platform. I think
Yeah.
you sounds like you've either figured that out or you're honing in on that.
Yeah, I'm getting really, really close. And this goes back to those exercises that like you've heard about before, identify your avatar, that I used to think were cheesy and, irrelevant or whatever. But I've come back full circle on that. And the only reason is because I've seen some of the biggest influencers out there, Cody Sanchez being one. I recently watched the video she was doing, and she talked about her avatar. And you know what those exercises are. Other people have heard it, where she had an avatar that had a name, a specific name. It was like George or whatever. And I think what the lesson I took from that is, when you get really clear on who your quote avatar is, who you're trying to reach and connect with, it gets easier to create the content. And then you don't get sucked down the rabbit hole of creating something just because it's bright and shiny or it's the trend. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's number one, man. I got to double down on like, who am I really trying to reach, and who is it okay to say no to?
Yes, I love that. And I think for our audience that are, the frontline originators, but even as important, maybe sometimes more important, that the next layer up, the leaders of that team, I think this is so helpful for coaching our teams on really identifying, and unless you're just, hoping to pop off and all of a sudden get sponsored by, whoever would sponsor somebody like us, which for me, it's nobody. You probably have a purpose. And I think the loan officers, typically their purpose is going to be either messaging to potential referral partners and or directly to consumers. And so making sure you're kind of really knowing that audience is super, super helpful. Well, wait, I'm going to lose my train of thought because I had two other zingers I wanted to go down here. Dang.
It's okay. I can add something to that. Like
Please.
The other thing I'm looking at is, so I'm looking at strategy, avatar, like content. Who am I for? Who do I want to show up as? What do I think is my best talent and style? Because there's other people who do types of content that I would feel uncomfortable doing. And it wouldn't be me, and it would show up. It would suck on the video, right? Like the dancing or the skits or whatever. Like, I just can't do those.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
But the other thing that I've realized too from some of these investments I made is how important packaging is when it comes to your content. And what does packaging mean? It means like, well, think about a book. Like, we got books. We got the green book, right? Awesome. I'm sure you and Kyle thought about the packaging around that. Right? You've got the artwork, you've got the fonts, you've got there was thought and consideration around, because we do judge a book by its cover. And the same thing with content and video and posts. Packaging is important, and packaging actually does play into getting engagement. For example, YouTube, the packaging is incredibly important, right? It's thumbnail, it's title, and description. Those are the big three. And I know I haven't paid a lot of attention to that at all, and I think I've suffered because of it. So that's the other thing that I'm looking at when it comes to my content strategy is, how do I package something that's going to speak directly to the person I'm trying to reach?
Yeah, I think that's such a great point on YouTube, and you could there's probably a similar value for how you package content on LinkedIn as an example, right? And maybe it's slightly different than how you would do it on YouTube.
Well, I mean, one thing I just did actually, I posted today was these. They don't really call them carousels on LinkedIn. They're documents, I guess. The swipe where you swipe left. Images. Yeah. So it's actually a PDF. The way you have to upload that.
Yeah.
So it's kind of weird, but anyway, those get good engagement. Like, I know everybody talks about video and all that stuff, but the reality is like those and posts, thoughtful posts, which take time.
Yes.
Right? It's not just video. Video's great, but start to test some of the other things. So one takeaway I just started doing is I got this idea from somebody, like I said, spend some money, you get coaching. And this person was talking about how they're using ChatGPT to read the transcript of their video or podcast, and they're saying, "Hey, GPT, take 10 or 5 impactful quotes from this conversation, because you're going to turn those and use these, put them in a structure for LinkedIn, right? Posts, Instagram carousels, that kind of stuff." So I just did that, and that's the one I posted today, was from the Ryan Weiss interview, where it's just like 3 quotes, and I'm like, so that's what I'm going to be doing more of regularly, is diversifying the content as well.
So let's dissect that, because
Yeah.
I'm sure people are like, oh my God, who's got time for that? So if you time clocked,
Uh-huh.
not the podcast itself, because that's its
Right.
own piece of content, but from the time you grabbed the raw footage, the transcript, and did the translation all the way to creating the asset that you posted, elapsed time, was it 15 minutes? Was it 2 hours? How long did it take you to do that?
So yeah, there's a couple of steps. The easiest step is you upload your transcript of whatever to GPT, and you give it the prompt, which is, please, go through this transcript and find 5 impactful quotes to be used, and then give it the context. What are you going to use it for? Is it going to be for Instagram, LinkedIn, or do them both? And that took all of 5 minutes.
Right.
Okay. And so then the next step is turning that into an image. And you can do that yourself on Canva, or cut and paste the quotes and put them into a Canva template, which, by the way, they have templates for LinkedIn and Instagram. And so that was probably 20 minutes, if you want to mess with colors and if you don't have a branding palette already built out. But literally, I would say if you're just getting started, that's probably 30 minutes to 60 minutes. Now, once you have your template done, well, then you can just repurpose the same template, and all of a sudden, literally, you could do that in probably 30 minutes every single time, or have someone else do it.
Which, when I see those posts from time to time from folks, and I haven't seen yours yet, but as soon as we are done, I'm going to go check it out. I actually think, because a lot of people they overanalyze stuff sometimes, like, well, I already did a template in blue 2 weeks ago. I'm going to pivot and change this to something else. I would challenge you to say, if that blue formatted, carousel performed well for you, do it again in blue. Just, it's going to, you're going to change it up, because guess what? People that saw it and found value 2 weeks ago are going to say, oh, there's another Geoff post.
Right.
Their mind is like, I like what I saw before.
I mean, your company, FinLocker, has a personal brand color palette.
Yeah.
Right. So the argument, I mean, think about that. McDonald's, Amazon, like Coca-Cola. Yeah. Coca-Cola does not change its colors.
Right. That's right.
So whatever your brand colors are is what they should be, right?
Love it. All right, man. We got like 2 minutes.
Okay.
What do you want to leave the audience with as we are squarely in the home stretch of 2024, in Q4? What's something that you want to leave the audience with that they could do between now and year end to kind of set them up for success in 2025?
Yeah, such a great question. I think a simple thing to execute on, is go back to the leads and conversations that haven't converted yet. Because we are seeing a little bit of positive relief on the interest rate side. Obviously, people see that on the news. So if you've not reconnected, I know this sounds fundamental and basic level, but the truth is most people don't execute the basics really, really well.
Right.
On my whiteboard for over a year, I've had this. It's called "Be Brilliant in the Basics." Like, don't overcome. It's like you said earlier, conversations leads to contracts. So go back to your past client database, the buyers who bailed out, who didn't get their offer accepted or whatnot, and just start to have 3 conversations a day with those people. It's funny when we coach, I train loan officers to go teach real estate agents a bunch of classes, and one of them is business planning. Well, we walk them through this spreadsheet that shows how many conversations you need to have to close X amount of transactions. Yeah. And in the real estate world, it's an average of 40 conversations equals 1 transaction. Now, good news for LO, you don't need that many, actually.
Right.
It's much less. The question is, how many are you having? Do you know what your formula is? Because it's all math. So that'd be the one thing I do is go back to your past client database, start to scrub it, start to, step up those conversations. The refi opportunity, that's there also potentially. But that, for the quick hit, like have 3 to 5 conversations a day.
I love that. Yeah. And that's so actionable. It is, it's not that hard to do, but we get in our own heads, right? And you and I are not loan officers today. Those were former lives, but we get in our own heads today there's probably 3 conversations that I should be having every day, you should be having every day, right, that are going to ultimately meet our goals and objectives. And it's, we're our own worst enemy as humans in that regard.
Yeah. Yes. It's a whole nother show.
A whole nother show. Probably another network too. Geoff, thank you so much, man. I appreciate it. It's good. It's great to get connected again and get caught up. Love what you're doing. I'm a big fan of the of the podcast, have been for a number of years, and will be for as long as you're putting it out there.
As long as it's still good. Appreciate being here, man.
All right, everybody. Thanks for joining in this Friday for FinTech Fridays. Come back in 2 weeks for our next episode as we round out the year. See y'all.